Conscious Spirit Media. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Conscious Spirit Media. It's Benjamin Tor, and today I'm in the Imperial Hospital in London, in Hammersmith, and I'm with the amazing Dr. Robin. We're going to talk about the science of the psychedelic, the mushrooms, the plants, the neuroscience, what's the benefits, how it impacts the brain, why we're not really using it today in a society, and so much more. So Dr. Robin, thank you very much to having us today. It's a real pleasure, and welcome on the channel.
Thank you, nice to be here.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about you? Because Dr. Robin, he spoke on TEDx. It's many years he's studying the psychedelic mushrooms and different plants, right?
Yes.
So can you just introduce yourself a little bit more, and just how did you jump into searching this topic?
Sure. Well, let's go back to 2005. I was studying psychoanalysis and Freud and that kind of thing, and I came across Stanislav Grof's work, suggesting that LSD could alter the mind in such a way that you can see into the unconscious mind. And I thought this was incredible, and I didn't realize that LSD was used in that way in the 1950s, 60s, 70s in Grof's case. And this really opened a door for me. And then I contacted David Nutt and Amanda Fielding. David Nutt being the former head of the UK government drugs advice group, and he was the chief advisor to the UK government on drugs. And Amanda Fielding chairs and is the founder of the Beckley Foundation, who fund a range of different consciousness research and a lot of research on psychedelic drugs. So I wrote to these two people and I asked whether they could help me do research with psychedelics. I did a PhD with David Nutt, which I completed in 2009, looking at the serotonin system in the brain, a certain chemical that does a lot of important and interesting things, modulating consciousness and such like. I did work looking at MDMA users during my PhD. So I got my PhD in 2009 and I moved here, and here we are at Imperial College London, and I've been researching psychedelic drugs, doing human research, mostly brain imaging research, but also recently doing depression research as well, with psychedelic drugs from 2009 to today, to 2017. And that's the short version of my academic history.
It's really interesting. So what's I think my question really, as a shaman, it will be, what's really the difference between the plant, like mushrooms, and something more chemical, like MDMA or LSD? What's really the difference between both?
Well, there's not a huge difference. I mean, one of the differences is that the plants are plants, and the synthetic ones are synthesized chemically and don't occur naturally in nature. But if you look at their pharmacology, how they work on the brain, they work in quite similar ways. One of the differences is that a drug like LSD is a more complex drug than something like DMT, for example, dimethyltryptamine, which is found throughout nature.
Yeah, true.
It's also
we have this one in ayahuasca.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, major psychedelic in ayahuasca. DMT is quite a familiar molecule to the brain and the body. It's actually, occurs in the brain and body, although in minuscule amounts.
But we have this one. If I'm wrong, let me know. But I think we have this one in pretty every living organism in the planet, right? Like the plants and animals. And
I think that's true. It doesn't really occur in large concentrations in the brain, but nevertheless you can find it, and there have been theories about it being involved in the natural system in the brain and released during different states.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, there's not much evidence to support that, but nevertheless, it is a compound, a molecule, which is very similar to molecules that occur in large concentrations in the brain, like serotonin, for example. So for that reason, it's quite a familiar molecule, and it's easy for the brain to break it down, to chop it up and kind of get rid of it. And that's why DMT doesn't last very long.
Okay.
Whereas something like LSD, the experience does last for quite a long time, because it's a bit more of a foreign molecule, and so it takes a bit longer for the brain to chop it up and get rid of it. But DMT, you can smoke it and you have an experience that might be the most profound and unusual experience of the whole of your life.
Totally.
But it's over in like 5 or 10 minutes, which is incredible. But
if we smoke it, but the DMT we can have in the plant in the ayahuasca, and it could be like the whole night, right? Like 5-6 hours.
Well, if you
experience.
re-drink, I mean the effects are about 2-3 hours long if you just have one drink.
Yeah.
But if you were to go back and re-drink, then you could be under its effects for 5-6 hours, whatever.
So basically, between like the chemical drugs, LSD or MDMA, and the plants, there is not really a lot of difference in terms of experience, right?
Doesn't seem to be. Subtle differences. I mean, the purists will hear that and say, "Oh, completely different." But the effects of psychedelics are very dependent on, the mode of administration. So, for example, if you inject psilocybin, which is a chemical found in magic mushrooms, you can have an experience that's like a DMT experience. You can be shot into this psychedelic space and then come down in like 10-15 minutes. Whereas if you eat some mushrooms, they'll last for 5-6 hours. So how you take it makes a difference. The dose makes a big difference. The context in which you take it,
environment, right?
The environment.
Because today we have a lot of people taking drugs or plants because they just want to feel high, right? And I always say it's completely different when we're doing in a ceremony. So what's really the what's gonna happen when we start using this drug? If we take this drug, it's really open the consciousness. We're going deeper in the subconscious. And I remember one of your talk, you were speaking about you define the psychedelic like psyche, delic delos, and you said something the soul and revealing the soul, right? Can you explain a little bit more?
Well, I mean the origin of the word was to combine two words to mean these drugs reveal the contents of the mind, and so if you chop up the term psychedelic, it does mean mind revealing, essentially. Put in the simplest way, it means mind revealing. If we're going to be really pernickety about it, we might say it means something like to make the soul visible, but it's the same thing, essentially, mind revealing. And you'll find that this is what people endorse, when they have these experiences. They say that this is what happens. And it's, in my view, the reason why the term psychedelic has stuck. It's because it's the most honest and accurate term about what these drugs do.
So why some people may be afraid to use it, and why some people are constantly looking for it? Can we be really addicted of this or not?
No, I don't think so. There's not really any evidence that people become addicted to psychedelics. They might be drawn to psychedelics just through curiosity. And for example, they might have an experience with DMT and then just think, what the hell was that, and then go back and go back and go back. But it's not to get a high, it's to try and find out what the hell is in this space, but people, ayahuasca, typically it's quite unusual to find people who drink regularly. And actually to drink regularly, it can start to fray a little bit people's hold on reality. It seems much healthier when people use psychedelics if they use them like a couple of times a year, or they might use them when they feel that they need to work on something, a psychological issue, an emotional issue. So these are drugs not really of recreation. They're not drugs for fun. Anyone thinking that they're going to take a psychedelic and have fun is going to get a rude awakening because they don't work that way. It's more like a confrontation with your soul.
So it may be one of the reasons why people are afraid to take some?
I think so, because they hear these stories, you know, and they'll hear from their friend who looks at them wide-eyed and says, oh my God, you know, I took ayahuasca and now I've seen the spirit world or something. And so that can be pretty frightening, and rightly so, you know.
It takes courage to...
It takes courage, or you know, recklessness in some cases. It should take courage, and if you approach it properly, you should be brave, and you should be willing to do work, to look inside, to go into problems, to explore problems, but not to take psychedelic, you know, at a party or to have...
Totally.
Fun,
I always say to my clients, when they say, oh, the magic mushroom is the one we took when we were on a party, right? And I'm like, well, that's the one, but this is not how you should take it, because it really open your consciousness, open your aura, and you're very vulnerable to all the entities. And actually it's the way you can really work on yourself. And as you say, I think people are maybe afraid to figure out all the shit or what's going to happen if they take the mushrooms, right?
Well, in a way, you know, my friend used this term, you know, if we promote a way of taking a psychedelic where you either take it for fun or you don't pay attention to the context, to the set and setting, to the environment, then you're abusing the drug, you know, it's drug abuse, you know. And so if you're going to treat these drugs with the appropriate level of respect, then you're not going to abuse them in that way.
Totally. Yeah. So in terms of medical aspect, I know you did some research on how we can heal from the depression or from different mental disease the people by using the psychedelic. Do you think it's possible actually, and do you think it's helpful?
I do think it's possible. I've seen it happen. I've seen people fundamentally change after a psychedelic in a positive way with psilocybin, that they've been depressed for years, decades, and they come to us, you know, devoid of any real emotion other than misery, and then after their experience, sometimes during, we see this transformation, a lot of emotional release, and at the end a kind of lightening.
Wow.
And then they can start to smile again, you know, and engage.
It's very positive.
Yeah, it's beautiful when it works, and so it is possible. We're learning better how to make it more likely, where to identify things that, you know, might mean that the experience is going to be difficult, and then how to navigate and deal with those kind of situations. So there's a lot of work to do still, and we're just finding our way, but this has a long history, you know. There'll be some people listening to this thinking, hold on, we know from, you know, shamans using psychedelics for thousands of years that they maybe can be medicines. Well, thousands at least, so, you know, don't you guys think you're too clever for having reinvented the wheel? Because, but the thing is, you know, we're in a position now in modern science where we know how to demonstrate something and how to test it properly, how to be conscious of our own biases, and so, you know, we can, I think, put these drugs, these medicines to the test in a particularly rigorous way that perhaps hasn't happened throughout history, and demonstrate to the modern world that these can really work, you know.
So how does it work basically, to heal like the depression? What's happened really in the brain, in the chemical in the body? Because what is it, the depression basically? Like, what's your definition or point of view of the depression? Because for us as a shaman, it's only an imbalance between the soul, the mind and the heart. So the spirit and the mind is just not aligned, and this is why we say it's as the depression. But how, for you, what's the...
Well, it would be a slightly different choice of terms, but maybe not so different in reality. So someone might become disconnected from the world, go into their mind in an excessive way. They stop going to work, and they either feel devoid of emotion and flat, or they are crying all the time and are just miserable. They can't find pleasure in things that they used to find pleasure in. Everything feels worthless and pointless and heavy and a burden, and they can't think clearly. You know, this is when depression's at its most severe, and then it feels desperate and they can't find a way out, and one of the only ways out they can think of is to take their own lives. You know,
does it could be a chemical imbalance as well in the
body?
Well,
that's a bit simplistic, to be honest. You know, the pharmaceutical industry have sort of promoted that view. I'm a psychopharmacologist, so I can say with some authority.
That's what I heard, from the pharmacology, pharmacy and everything.
But it's, you know, part bullshit, to be honest. So there are things going on with the serotonin system, but it's not clear cut. And the current feeling, at least my own view, and David Nutt would share this view, I think, that the serotonin system may govern to some extent how flexible the mind is. And so when there isn't perhaps a normal level of signaling at a certain aspect of the serotonin system, the mind might get a bit rigid. And whether that's true or not, you know, future research will determine, but what we do think with a bit more confidence really is that what psychedelics do is to kind of free the mind, you know, to kind of lubricate the mind, and they do that by working on a particular aspect of the serotonin system. And why is that thing there? You know, ordinarily, you know, some people might think, come up with some ideas that it's there for psychedelics. You know, I tend to think it's probably not. It's probably there for serotonin, and it's probably there because sometimes we need transformation. You know, perhaps because we're in a crisis, or you know, something isn't working, and coping.
So, do you think it's like reconnecting the person with his soul or his purpose or his like a really higher self or his true essence? If he's stuck in a mind, like the mushroom, the psychedelic, can help him to really realign himself again. And
I think there's a few ways of saying it, you know, and you could say it that way. That's perhaps more of a spiritual way to say it. But you know, I don't think it would necessarily be too inconsistent to say that yes, there is a change where the mind and the body and the whole person is returned to something more fundamental. There's a shift from, you know, being wrapped up in the game, so to speak, to undergoing some kind of experience that is profound, that takes you back to things that seem important, essential, that aren't wrapped up in the kind of bullshit of people and egos. And maybe, you know, that system is there in nature, and sometimes when we have crises, it can happen naturally, and what we do with psychedelics is use these drugs or these medicines to kind of do that thing, you know, to reset the system and take it back to this.
It's really interesting what you're sharing, because I spend a lot of time in nature. I mean, the shaman, we spend a lot of time, we connect with Mother Earth, and we're really looking into the nature, and that's exactly what you describe. It's like when the nature reached the point, there's a crease, there's something, and so she reset everything, and it's pretty the same. So when the person like reached the point, it's a crease, it's too much. The system reset, right?
Yeah. I think nature, you know, is a bridging factor here, because as scientists we study nature. You know, we have to remind ourselves of that sometimes. When we're biologists, we're studying nature in the natural world. But also this spiritual movement is, you know, deeply connected to nature and the importance of nature. And so I think this appreciation of nature and the natural way of things can help to bridge, you know, spiritual perspectives and scientific perspectives.
So do you think in the next few 5-10 years we will have really a huge, how I can say, like the bridge, or the spirituality and the science will really connect together, and they will start speaking exactly together, like the same language, or like help people in the same way?
I hope that process starts. I think there'll always be a difference, you know, like, you know, people from different countries speak a different language, you know.
True.
But, you know, through through greater communication, we get to appreciate each other better and understand each other. And so I think a similar thing might happen with science and spirituality. So I do think that the language will probably still be a little bit different.
Yeah.
But what I would hope for is that scientists are a bit more receptive to this way of thinking about the mind and the brain, that talks about the whole of the mind, the unconscious mind, the ego and conflict, experiences like ego dissolution, feeling a sense of oneness, without turning up their noses and thinking, oh, that's for the hippies or whatever. But equally, I hope that the people who really value spirituality don't see science as a kind of enemy, a threat to them and their worldview, because I really don't see it that way. I see it as a friend.
Well, sometimes it's pretty difficult when we know, like the industry, the pharmaceutical industry and all the company, they try to stop sometime the plants and all the alternative medicine because they need profit, So do you think is one of the reasons maybe why we're not using shaman in a hospital, or why we're not using plants sometime to really heal some disease? Because we know we can heal disease with different plants. So do you think is one of the reasons?
Yeah, I do actually. I mean, there's something about the system that doesn't help the development of natural medicines, of plant-based medicines, because the system wants to make money, in a capitalist system, and in order to make money in medicine, you need to patent, you need to kind of selfishly claim something in this world that is then your medicine, that if people are going to use it, they have to pay you to use it, and so someone gets rich, But it's a real shame, because there are all these plant-based medicines out there that could be really effective for people that aren't patented, and so people can't get as rich marketing them. So there is this inherent corruption in medicine, which is a real shame.
It is.
So I would agree with that. But what I would say is, for listeners, please don't associate, business and the pharmaceutical industry with scientists, because we're conscious of that corruption, and we don't all roll over and succumb to that corrupt way of doing our science.
Wow, thank you very much for all of this information. I really enjoy. I hope, guys, you enjoyed the interview. And I have one last question. As a scientist, what do you think about taking the body in a whole, like the physical body, the soul, the auras and everything? So do you think it's important to have really a whole point of view when we want to treat a disease, or because today the society really separate all the time, so it's pretty hard to really heal something? And I always think all the disease we have, it first start in the emotional field with emotion. So what's your point of view about this?
Yeah, I'm open to that view. As a scientist, we try to be clear in our definition of things, and that just helps us in understanding, essentially. But the principle of holistic healing is one that really appeals to me. That if you're going to treat someone in the most comprehensive way, you don't just treat the serotonin system. You treat their whole being. You treat how they relate to other people. You treat how they view and behave in the world as a whole.
Totally.
As part of a system, right? Living symbiotically with other people and with nature. So my hope is that as we go forward, more and more people will appreciate that kind of way of looking at things, and it can help develop a more healthy way of living and behaving and interacting.
That's amazing. I'm checking my notes, but I think we cover all the questions. It's really, really interesting and fascinating, so thank you very much. Maybe just last one of the our amazing followers asked me a question, and it was, is the psychedelic experience is purely hallucinogenic, or it could be like a really spiritual experience?
Well, there's a clear answer to that. It's not purely hallucinogenic at all. In fact, the hallucinogenic aspect, which is mostly visual, you could even argue to some extent is kind of superficial. It's sort of almost, it can be a kind of distraction, but when people can break through the perceptual effects to get to the core emotional experience, that's when you know, the really interesting things can happen. So the term psychedelic mind revealing is much more accurate than the term hallucinogen.
So there is really a purpose behind taking the mushrooms. It's really to help and to grow, to how I can say, to move forward. If someone wants to have this experience, he needs to really have a purpose or a reason to do it.
Well, we've shown that actually. You know, we've done this survey where we asked people about a number of different things, and one of the things we ask about is intention. You know,
intention, right?
And when people have an intention to have a healing experience, and they have a clear intention, then they're more likely to have a profound, meaningful experience that helps reconnect them to themselves and to other people and to the world in general, and that seems to be really important. So, you know, for anyone who's never taken a psychedelic that thinks maybe I want to do it, you know, the importance of intention, as well as a number of different things, you know, can't be emphasized enough, really.
Cool. Amazing. Thank you very much. Do you have any like website or something if people want to learn more about your research, about your talk, about how they can find you, how they can see your work?
There are a couple of websites I could mention. One is we got psychedelicscience.org.uk, which is something I set up a few years ago that I really need to maintain better, but a friend of mine kindly sort of does that on my behalf. We've also got this initiative called psychedelicsurvey.com, which is proving really useful because it's not just, you know, us, well, it's not us advertising our research, it's more for research. So people who log into this are contributing to the research.
Awesome.
And they do that by filling out surveys ahead of having a psychedelic experience, and then during the process as well. So it's not, we don't see it as an endorsement of psychedelic use. It's just if you have that intention to take a psychedelic, why don't we do our best to try and turn it into data to help, you know, further knowledge and understanding. So psychedelicsurvey.com is going to be a really good facility going forward.
Are you working, just really a personal question, are you working with some shaman, like to understand what they can see and how they can connect with the science? Or
a bit. We know a few shamans, true shamans, you know, working in South America, for example, and I've been struck by their humility and how they are open to scientific research and see that as helping to, you know, increase awareness of plant medicines, and so I'm really heartened by that they're not suspicious of us,
totally.
And there's this mutual respect, really. And about that respect, you know, there are certain aspects of shamanic practice that maybe we could think about even incorporating into our trials, you know, keeping the science good and rigorous, but there are things like group participation which are really worth thinking about, you know, the importance not just of doing personal work but interpersonal work. And for example, you know, towards the end of a ceremony, as kind of silly as it might sound to some hard scientists, you know, if we can have some actual participation, like a simple song, you know, that the guides sing, that the patient can sing along to, then there might be something really beautiful in that.
Totally.
So you know, these little things.
Ikaro's song is really beautiful. I mean, I just spent the last 3 months in Peru, and I was working deeply in the Amazon with a different shaman, and it's really beautiful. It's totally beautiful. So yeah, thank you for recognizing us and to as well connect between the science and shamanism.
It's
I
a
really
pleasure.
appreciate. Thank you very much for this interview. Do you want to end with something particularly you would like to share to the people, or?
I don't know. Oh gosh, just be well and be conscious.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think for me is my definition of spirituality is just about consciousness. It's about to be aware and conscious in our daily actions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aho.
Aho. Thank you very much, Dr. Robin. It was amazing. Guys, I will link his website on the description. So thank you really very much to listen the interview. Please leave a comment below if you have any question. Comment below and I will try to give you the most amazing answer I can and share the interview. Thank you very much. It was Benjamin Toll with the Dr. Robin today on Conscious Spirit Media.